Director, I've begun recording the meeting.
Thank you.
And I'm ready to call it to order, but perhaps roll call should be first on the agenda.
And have we checked, Rosanna, Lauren, have we heard from anybody else that they wouldn't be attending?
One resignation, Nick, and then
Right.
Harsh. So those are the only two we're aware of. Roseanne, you do send out the agenda. Are you aware of anybody else who's RSP declined the meeting tonight? Sorry, we can't hear you.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you now.
No one's reached out to me. I am emailing the committee members right now who have not yet joined to see if they're joining.
Great.
Okay.
So do we really have two IT staffers?
Not
We
really.
No, we have backup just in case one gets disconnected.
This is my third straight meeting, Ashwini, so I just sit on it all day. That's what I'll do.
So we can wait for a few more minutes, but if we don't get to quorum, there's a couple of options. I mean, obviously we could, cancel the meeting and reschedule, or because we have somebody here from HTL to provide a presentation, and there are a few members of the commission. You could also have the presentation, but then no action can be taken on any of the items. I think it'll be kind of up to the commission or what the preference is. Again, we can give it maybe another few minutes, but it's 5:35 already, so maybe up until 5:40. And if we don't have a quorum, we'll have to make a decision.
My inclination is to go ahead with the information part of the meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other committee members have any opinions on this?
No, I second that. Well, our consultants' valuable time. Let's make the best use of it.
I don't mind either way. At your disposal, it would only depend on availability at another date if you guys choose to go that way.
Well,
But,
the minute will be available for the rest of the committee member to review. So
and you are recording this for their availability to watch it.
I actually would like to go with the meeting today as well.
Thank you.
Roseanne, any updates?
No, no updates yet.
Okay. So, Chair, whenever you would like to get the meeting started, I guess we can go ahead and just do. Lauren, I don't recall if there's other items on the agenda besides this for action, but I think
There
all
are.
of it would have to be tabled.
Correct. It's just pretty minimal in terms of approving the minutes, which we could table those and put it in our next regular meeting.
Yes.
Are there any members of the public in attendance?
No.
Okay, I call this unofficial, quorumless session of the Measure F Oversight Committee meeting to order. Would someone like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure, and I think we're gonna get the flag up for the pledge. Is that, Roseanne, is that you or Ron? Oh, can't see it, Ron.
I guess maybe we're not going to have a billowing flag. Would somebody like to lead us in the pledge, please?
I'd be happy to lead, Chair. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Roll call. I am here. I believe Harsh will not be here. He sent a separate communication. I'm not expecting Nicholas. Joyita, are you present? Jade, good afternoon. Tanmay, you're here. Daniel Sullivan, are either of the alternates present? Don Watt or Ranjith? Okay. As expected, we do not, well, not as expected, but as we figured out earlier, we do not have a quorum. There are no alternates to seat. Let's skip right past approval of the agenda. Approval of the minutes, we'll skip that. As I understand, there are no members of the public, so we will breeze right past the public forum. Business items. We have a representative from HDL with us to talk about sales tax and other related items. The floor is yours.
Wonderful, Chair. It looks like you may have just got one of your alternatives to attend. So if you'd like to take that first.
Hello, Don Watt.
Chair, Joyita just called me as well, and she's trying to connect. So I asked her if possibly she could call in.
Okay, it may turn into a real meeting after all. Okay, here's a parliamentary quandary for you. Can an alternate be seated without a quorum until the alternate is seated?
It is an interesting question, but I think the alternate could be seated because, we have two alternates. And if you, if you had three people like you have today, and you had two, I don't recall if Joyita is an alternate or she is a.
She's not.
Okay. So, I mean, we could give it a couple of minutes for her to join, but otherwise, I think seating of alternates is fine. This has never come up before, the question about whether you need a quorum to actually seat the alternate. One question that does come up is once the alternate is seated, if a voting member comes on board, do they stay on? And they do once they're seated. So for that meeting, they will be the voting member.
Okay, so my interpretation is that we can seat our alternate, form a quorum. In which case, I will invite, excuse me, a motion to approve the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
How about a second?
I would like to approve the agenda.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Hearing no votes in opposition, the agenda has been approved. Will somebody make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from last time? These were sent out via email along with the agenda.
I have reviewed the agenda and I concur with it, so I move to approve the agenda.
This is the meeting minutes from.
No, excuse me, the meeting
Yes,
minutes.
okay. Just to clarify, is there a second?
Honestly, I haven't read the meeting minutes yet.
We can table that for next time, Chair.
Sure. Which brings us back around to the business for this evening.
Wonderful.
Once again, you have the floor.
Great. I think let me get it over to share really quick. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Wonderful.
You can see your screen. I don't know if you can turn up your volume a little bit, Bobby, too, please.
Okay. I'll probably just speak a little louder. Sometimes it's just a volume on my end coming out. So thank you very much, Chair Lauren, Aswani Chair. So glad to be able to be with you tonight to make the presentation, give you some information specifically around Measure F and some of the trends that we're seeing right now, and it really kind of set hopefully some baseline information before Measure F revenue really starts coming in frequently and maybe hopefully cross our fingers more heavily. Oops, let me get a little bit more set up on my end here. There we go. Okay. So just on the screen and a little bit about myself, Bobby Young, I'm the Client Services Director here at HDL. It's a nice title, but it basically means I lead a team of about 12 professionals who meet with clients every quarter regarding sales tax. We try to keep our finger on the pulse of what's going on. But specifically for myself, I've been in and around local government for about 25 years now. The last 8 with HDL, the prior about 13 with a local agency down here in Orange County, Southern California. And then before my time with that agency, I worked for a CPA firm auditing cities, counties, and nonprofit agencies. So I've got hopefully a nice diverse background and an experience that adds some value to all of our clients. A little bit more about HDL as well. We're so proud to be able to serve about over 400 clients statewide. City of Milpitas most recently brought us on board, and we're so proud and privileged to be able to serve your community as well. As you'll see, our clients include cities, counties, and special districts. Here, think transportation agencies, most notably. We are also so proud to have retained our clients for such a long period of time and really feel like they value the services that we provide. We don't just focus on sales tax. We also have different pieces of our business that focus specifically on property tax, economic development, business license, and tax administration. So tax administration is things from TOT or transient occupancy tax, business tax, short-term rentals. It has a lot to do with the collection of local revenues to bring them in and make it a little bit easier for staff and our clients. We've most recently also expanded into cannabis management, going from start to finish with regards to cannabis retail opportunities that some communities have opened up. And then also short-term rental compliance. So not just the collection of revenue, but making sure that those that have short-term rental businesses are actually remitting the taxes that are due. That's just a little bit more about us at HDL. Tonight, we're going to focus a lot on sales tax and specifically Measure F. Here on the screen, you see, if you look at the bottom right, and let me get the laser pointer going. Oops, there we go. So down here in the bottom right, you'll see the total tax rate within the city of Milpitas now 9.25% total, and it's just how it breaks down. The biggest portion of the total sales tax rate does go to the state. It's almost 4%. You see it up here at the very top. The highlighted or boxed in blue area is the portion of the sales tax rate that by legislative default comes back to the local agencies, and that is 1%. Most recently, city residents had approved Measure F, so now the quarter-cent tax is included there. Then the long list of additional agencies, whether it be counties or the county that gets almost 2% or a little bit more than 2%, or various transportation agencies that collectively get an additional 2% of the sales tax rate. So it's kind of just how it all gets divvied out. Tonight, though, we're going to be focused pretty heavily on the 1% Bradley Burns that comes to the city, while we kind of set the table for Measure F revenues. So that'll be coming in. They've started to come in, and will continue to come in going forward. Just to lay the groundwork, no doubt it may have come up during the voting process that you guys went through back in November of 2020. What's this new tax? How prevalent are, when you see at the screen, at the very top of the screen, TUTs, transactions use tax districts? They have been increasing throughout the entire state, going all the way back to 2013 when we had about 177. Then most recently, all the way up through November of 2020, now we have over 400 different tax areas or transactions and use taxes throughout the state. And about 95% of the state's population lives in one or more transactions and use tax districts. As we saw with your breakdown, there's a lot of different taxes that have been approved over the years. And then also throughout the entire state, this is just, again, some of the statistics that we keep in-house. 34 of the 58 counties have at least one, and then 200 of 482 cities. So not quite half the number of cities, but pretty non-discriminatory when we look at it and see how many are in Northern California versus Southern California, and coastal versus the mountain ranges. So again, just some statistics there of the different transactions and use tax districts throughout the state. You may hear me kind of use some different terms, whether it be transactions and use tax, district tax, local add-on tax. The three are all homogeneous. They all mean the same thing. And here on the right side of the screen is just the specific California Revenue and Taxation Code sections that give each agency, you guys included now, the legal authority to levy a tax and then begin collecting on that. I'm going to kind of go through the presentation, and then we can take questions. But if there's anything that really jumps off the screen, especially in these next couple of sessions or slides, if there's anything that really jumps off and you have a question, I think maybe even go ahead and throw it out there so that we can take that time to dive through it, but definitely Q&A at the very end as well. Let's quickly talk about the differences between the Bradley Burns and who pays Bradley Burns tax, that 1%, and then who's going to pay Measure F. I don't know during the campaign and the election process if it was ever kind of put out there that visitors pay the add-on tax or the additional tax, and it's not always the case. For those that you see on the screen, grocery stores, retail centers, restaurants, gas stations, really there's no way to discern where those people live. So everybody who comes into the city of Milpitas and buys something that is taxable from one of these, the 1% Bradley Burns will come back to the city, plus now Measure F will come back to the city and be remitted. The big differences are over these next few slides. Here it's with registered vehicles, cars, new, used, motorcycles, boats, RVs, aircraft. This is where, when we're talking about a very large taxable dollar purchase, there is the distinction of where does the individual live and what is their tax rate to determine how much they will pay and where does the tax dollars go. So on the right side of the screen, you can see I've given a quick little example here. When we have, let's just say for an auto purchase, a new car, the buyer pays the total sales tax rate where the vehicle is going to be registered. So under this example, where a buyer lives in a non-TUT or doesn't have a local district tax, they're going to pay the statewide base sales tax rate of 7.25%. And but they purchase it from a vehicle, or purchase the vehicle from a car dealer in a city that has a tax rate of 9.25%, like the city of Milpitas. You have the 2 car dealerships there in town, and let's say somebody comes from another area to buy. The buyer is only going to pay the 7.25% tax rate. The 1% local Bradley Burns will be allocated to the city where the car dealer is located. So in this case, the city of Milpitas will receive that 1% Bradley Burns, like you always have. And then no additional local taxes will be allocated because the buyer's sales tax rate was 7.25%. So conversely, on the second example, where a buyer lives in a TUT city, right, has a total sales tax rate of 9.25%, like the quarter cent you guys have now, and you purchase from a vehicle from a car dealer in a city that has a total sales tax rate of just 7.25%. So going into maybe more of our mountain community or far north community that doesn't have, they just have the base sales tax rate. The buyer, in this case, let's just use as the example of Milpitas resident, they're still going to pay a total of 9.25% because that's their sales tax rate from the city that the vehicle is going to be registered in. The 1% local Bradley Burns gets collected and allocated to where the car dealer is located. So in this case, like, let's just say far north, that 1% will stay there. But now, like the 0.25% Measure F would be remitted back to the city of, collected and remitted back to the city of Milpitas, because they'll use that address of where the vehicle is going to be located or registered. So sometimes, and especially now with add-on taxes, there's a little bit of extra questions about, when do I have to pay this? When don't I? When it comes to registered vehicles, really, when it comes, and then thinking about Measure F specifically, only Milpitas residents will pay Measure F when it comes to things like a registered vehicle. The general premise there is that the city, sorry, my lights just went out. The general premise there is that the residents are the ones who voted, in this case, for the tax. And so they're the ones that are required to pay it. somebody coming from another city didn't have a chance to vote on the city of Milpitas measure, and thereby they shouldn't have to pay it. So it's sometimes that's a little bit easier situation to remember versus exactly how sales tax law is written. Also, the thing to keep in mind, and I'm kind of laying the groundwork for what's to come, right, is when we're talking about equipment, supplies, bulk fuel, anything that is physically delivered to another location, deliveries that come into the city, Measure F will be collected and remitted, but also deliveries going out of the city, Measure F will not be collected and remitted. And it kind of takes that same mindset or same, philosophical approach. A resident or a business in this case is located in Milpitas. It's voter approved, so it's applicable on everything that comes in. But anything that's going out, those customers in this case didn't have an opportunity to vote on the local measure, so they shouldn't have to pay for, in this case, Measure F. They will pay for, if they've got a measure in their city where the goods are going to, then it's collected and remitted to their agency, or their city. Also, you see here as far as bullet points now, especially with the implementation of AB 147 here in California, and that's the state's implementation of the Wayfair decision from the National Supreme Court. Many internet and online retailers are required to collect and remit local and the local 1% and any locally adopted TUT measures back to those specific agencies. So here we're kind of thinking Amazon, eBay, Facebook, Wayfair, kind of all the big online retailers are required to collect and remit now Measure F for goods that are shipped into the city. It doesn't matter where they come from when we're talking about Measure F. It's just if they're delivered into the city boundaries, then it'll be collected and we will expect it to be collected and remitted. And then here's the second bullet point, mostly out-of-towners pay the tax. It's not always applicable. It's not the easiest way to think about it. If out-of-towners come in and eat at the restaurants, yes, they will pay, just like local residents will. But when we're thinking about some of those big purchases and even online purchases, it's not always the case. So you kind of heard me talk about setting up the table of how it functions, Measure F, different than the local Bradley Burns. What you see on the screen here is a breakdown, and I believe Director Lauren Lai has shown this in the past of how diverse the city's Bradley Burns sales tax base is. Whether pieces come directly from the auto industry, and new auto dealers are a part of that, or the building and construction sector specifically. The city does have a fairly large percentage of its Bradley Burns base that comes from what we classify as business and industry. A lot of business to business activity going on here. Electrical equipment suppliers, medical providers are included there. For some other communities, the garden and agricultural businesses make up, or go into this category that we classify as business and industry. So it's pretty diverse, but the city has a very large portion of its base Bradley Burns that comes from B&I. Also, you'll see here food and drugs, fuel service stations, general consumer goods, restaurants, and then the city's allocation of the state and countywide use tax pools, representing about 20%. So the diversity of the sales tax base is really, really good for the city, not overly heavily weighted in one sector. And that kind of then helps when we looking here at the most recent trend. So we don't have a lot of Measure F data yet. I think we are planning for future presentations to really dive into that. So I'll focus the next couple of slides on what we're seeing on the Bradley Burns side of the most recent trends, especially with the pandemic. It's has caused a craziness of windfall for different sectors, some good, some bad. And here on the screen, what you'll see, it's shown by fiscal year. And think from July all the way to June. And we now have within our database the April, May, June 2021 activity, so we can kind of really put together the entire fiscal year. Over here on the right side is probably the higher level, what the city has been experiencing the last couple of years. Fiscal years 19, 20, and 2021 have been heavily impacted by the pandemic, especially a year ago, March 2020, when the original shelter-in-place directive began. It severely impacted fiscal year 1920 for many. And then we've now been experiencing different things throughout the latest fiscal year, different trends that you see here. I've really highlighted or put these arrows on the two biggest sectors where we've seen a continual decline, and not unlike many other communities. The gold line here is general consumer goods, with restaurants and hotels being the red line. And not completely out of the realms of understanding what's been going on, especially with business closures, limited indoor availability of sales, or indoor dining at restaurants. We are anticipating and have started to see some data points that we are now forecasting these two sectors specifically to take a rise up when we're thinking about the next fiscal year. So just a little bit of our forecast. Along with fuel and service stations, that's the brown line here. As commuters get back on the road, we've seen gas prices go back up. So we will anticipate fuel and service stations start to inch up in the future. But a couple of sectors that the city that have otherwise helped the city, I think, during these last couple of fiscal years. You see here at the very top with business and industry and how diverse it is, only a small tick down in fiscal year 2021, but actually an uptick last fiscal year on this side, which is great. Increase in the county, state and countywide use tax pools here on the blue line. The approval or adoption of AB 147, that regulations on out-of-state online retailers now required to collect and remit, has definitely helped increase the blue line from where we were just a few years ago, when not all online retailers were required to collect and remit. They previously only ones with a California presence were required. Now everybody is to certain dollar thresholds. But really big ones, we're definitely seeing an increase in revenue from out-of-state online retailers.
Bobby, we have a member that has his hand up, Daniel.
Sorry about that. Oh, Daniel, you might be on mute still.
You're correct. I had a question, and this is all very interesting information. It's about $20 million, it looks like. But are we going to get a listing or some sort of forms that tell us where the money has been spent? My understanding of the Oversight Committee is we're supposed to agree or disagree or whatever with how the money is spent. All this is very good background information, but are we going to have a ledger sheet that basically says the money was spent on these things? Is that something we're going to have access to?
So Daniel, previously when we went through this process, we have quarterly meetings and we delineated different information at different meetings. So this is the Sales Tax 101. To answer your question, yes. So at our April 21st meeting, 6th meeting, we summarized in the agenda report the areas and programs that we're able to fund. We actually have to go through the whole fiscal year and then bring some of this information back at a later date. So not at this junction, because we just started receiving the revenues, but if I could refer you back to the April 26th agenda, there's summaries in there as to what was funded in the proposed budget.
I remember we voted on that. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Sure. Thanks, Bobby.
Yeah. And yeah, just as a reminder there, what we're seeing on the screen and even these dollars, the dollar amounts you see over here are related to the city's 1%, Bradley Burns, that, obviously the city has a lot of history on, and we can show that. related to Measure F, it'll inevitably only be around a quarter, 25% of the totals you see here. So just keep in mind that this is the full 1% that we're looking at. Going a little bit deeper into the details, if you will, I picked out a couple or just a few here of the large business types. So on the previous slide, and I'm going to just go back there really quickly, you can see the major industry groups where we get a lot of data and can see it all from different businesses. So we group it initially into a major industry group to make it a little easier to see the trends. Then we also have what we call business types. So taking that down just one level and maybe then see trends within even specific sectors. So the green line here, office equipment. Companies, you've got about a total of 74 who remit under the office equipment business type. Electrical equipment here is going to be the blue line, family apparel, building materials. You can kind of think different businesses and hopefully they're logical. I don't want to call any out by name just in case we run into confidentiality issues, but how we group into like subcategories. So we can see that again on a fiscal year basis where some of these have been trending. It does, office equipment and electrical equipment do kind of have a seasonal effect or simply time periods when companies are spending more and thereby generating more sales tax, maybe increasing their sales in one fiscal year compared to another, and thereby how much they get, how much they remit. You can see the spike here from the electrical equipment business type back in 2016 through 2018. So there are those within, but the reason why I called these out is you have very specific, as we saw on the previous slide with general consumer goods and restaurants, you have two very big industries, family apparel and casual dining, the orange or the gold and the lavender lines here that have taken the biggest hit through the pandemic. And they are categories that we are anticipating, again, a rebound to happen and won't expect this drop off to continue, see a rebound. That'll only help when we start looking at Measure F revenues, that it's kicking in at a time where we do anticipate some of these trends to turn around in more of a positive fashion than what we've seen through the pandemic. Also on the red with gas stations, lack of commuters, lower gas prices through the pandemic. Now we're seeing more people on the road and higher gas prices. So again, the red line will we will anticipate that to start to come up. Building materials, specifically the green line, we've seen this throughout the state. It's the exact same, where interestingly enough, home and home values have not really been negatively impacted through the pandemic. We've really only seen property values continue to rise, increasing the equities that a lot of homeowners have access to, and thereby tap into that, put money back into their homes. We've seen the building materials, Home Depot, Lowe's, and any lumber companies really seeing dramatic gains during this last fiscal year through the pandemic. It's fascinated us, along with auto sales in general. So yeah, that's just some of the trends that we're seeing right now on the sales tax front. You might get questions as committee members. Some of you may even be local business owners. We get this question a lot from those that are thinking about a tax measure, but also those that recently approved is, wow, our businesses are really going to be negatively impacted. It's why I had a couple of slides at the very front to show how prevalent add-on taxes or local district taxes are throughout the state. We really do not see much of an impact at all on local businesses when a new measure is put into place. Knowing the area and the county like I do up there, in the Bay Area adjacent, there are a lot of cities that have an even bigger local tax compared to the quarter-cent Measure F. And I would say then the city of Milpitas is probably looked at as maybe a tax haven, or not have to pay as much at restaurants and general consumer goods and gas stations than some of the other local cities. But when it comes to the impacts on business, going from tax to post-tax, it's there really isn't anything to measure as far as a negative impact. Customers mainly focus on the base cost of whatever it is they're buying. Most don't even pay attention too much to the sales tax component. And if they do, it's timing, right? So it's more of a hassle to try and hunt for who has the lowest sales tax rate on the TV that I'm going to buy. So I wouldn't worry too much, and hopefully put those local businesses at ease if that they won't be impacted too heavily. Latest news and trends, along with what I showed you as far as the pandemic and its impacts on local sales tax there in the city. Here on a bigger scale, this is a trend that we've been watching within all of our data. Just to kind of talk through a couple of these. The green line is specifically from local brick and mortar general consumer retailers. Think Costco, Walmart, Target, TJ Maxx, Marshalls, and those all kind of traditional brick and mortar. And then the blue line is where we see all of the money coming from online businesses, whether it be local, where tax dollars go to a specific city because they have the online retailer located there, or goods coming from out of state and tax dollars flowing into the countywide use tax pools. We combine that here into the blue. And over here to the right, I've had to include a couple of talking points that help really explain the dramatic growth, especially out of the blue line from online. Back in 2012 was the first assembly bill regulations on out-of-state online retailers. We saw a couple specific retailers start to collect and remit, and that really kind of signifies this first jump up. Then most recently, as you've heard me mention a couple of times, AB 147, Assembly Bill 147, went into effect April 2019. Then as a subset portion of that bill was regulations on marketplace facilitators. So those online retailers, or those that help attach customers with goods. Here, think Amazon, but also Amazon allows third-party merchants to use its website, and they are facilitating the marketplace. So here in California, Amazon's is required to collect and remit the taxes relative to that third-party merchant's sale activity. And so that was October 2019 is when we saw a big jump up, and it explains a portion of this 18 to 19 year jump here. Now we've got the pandemic that started in March of 2020, ran all the way through the end of the calendar year. Stores closed, which really explains this drop off here at brick and mortar. Everybody shifted over to buy online, and you can see how dramatically that has shifted tax dollars between brick and mortar and online. This is a very interesting one. We love it. We show it on a calendar year, so we wait to get a lot of data before updating it. 2021 and beyond is going to be very interesting for us to see how customers come back into brick and mortar and what happens with this blue line. Do consumers' habits stay the same, buying online at the paces that they have been, or does it drop off, get into more of a comfortable norm going forward? So we are anticipating that likely scenario where this line will fall off just a little bit, but then ride out and figure out its balance point with spending habits. But it is very interesting for us to keep watching this. Then on this next topic here, there's a lot of conversation most recently about a specific change of tax allocations for an online retailer. I'll kind of watch confidentiality here, but it really comes back to the heart of the issue. As you see here, sales tax is applied when goods are located in California at the time the sales occur. So if the goods are stored in California, go out to a consumer here in California, that's sales tax. The use tax component is what you've heard me reference a lot, when goods come from out of state. And even if they pass through a warehouse here in California, if they were out of state at the time that the customer, both you and I, buy them, then the tax dollars are considered use tax and get allocated via the countywide use tax pool. Which happy to do a deeper dive on that topic at a later point if needed. But more specifically, we had this large online retailer here traditionally was in this box. Their business structure had dictated that they specifically allocated 100% of their tax dollars to the countywide use tax pool. They most recently made some changes to that business structure. And now instead of 100% going into the countywide use tax pool, a portion of the goods still come from out of state, but now they have a legal California fulfillment center, and tax dollars there are going to be apportioned back to the fulfillment center or where those goods are located at the time that we bought them. So this is a big change where some agencies are on this side. They have the large fulfillment center located in their jurisdiction, and they're starting to see a large increase in sales tax that's being allocated to them. And it's coming at the expense, if you will, of the countywide use tax pools where goods used to be dictated where the goods were sent versus where they were stored. And so we are on top of this topic, helping out a lot of agencies navigate this process. And we are likely to hear more from possible legislative changes or revenue and taxation code changes if it ever gets to that point. More specifically because revenues have shifted away from the pools and to local agencies. So that's, again, trying to walk confidentiality. We've been trying to be sensitive to the retailer and what they're doing. But yeah, any questions that you might have, anything that raised maybe a little feather to get more information on?
I have one question related to your last slide. The slide previously, you introduced the concept of the difference between sales and use tax. How does this, okay, and then the next slide, how does that work with use tax?
So yeah, use tax is normally when goods are coming from out of state, then the tax dollars, as you can see by way of, let me go back, there we go. By way of kind of this little chart here, anything that comes from out of state gets allocated, the 1% Bradley Burns goes into the countywide use tax pool where the goods have been shipped. So every county has a use tax pool that every agency gets a portion of. And that happens every quarter when goods are delivered, and then the tax dollars come into CDTFA. Does that help with that?
Yes, thank you.
Question? Okay, wonderful.
Are there any further questions for Bobby?
Out of curiosity, the blue box here says the California Fulfillment Center local tax is allocated to the jurisdiction in which the fulfillment center is located. So is that a good thing? I see the Amazon have a big warehouse right there on near Walmart.
Yeah,
near McCarthy Ranch.
it can be a good thing. When it comes to sales tax, it really is dependent on the business and their business structure. We tend to lean on the side when thinking about whether a warehouse or, I know we all like to call them fulfillment centers because it's easy, but sometimes they're just a warehouse. They're just a distribution center. And that's when really no sales tax dollars go to the local agency. We tend to try to look at that if it's a good thing that the city enjoys having people come and work in the city, in that warehouse, right? Have employment numbers, help it support employment numbers. If when sales tax dollars get allocated to that local jurisdiction that then has a true fulfillment center, because that's kind of how I try to delineate the two. It's extra, if you will. It's seen as oh wow, unexpected benefit. In terms of overall sales tax, yes, you'd rather have, it'd be more of a benefit to have the dollars allocated to you versus not allocated to you. So that is, you can kind of see that as it's a good thing to have it, but not everybody can or does, because it's really dependent on the business itself and how legally they're structured, that then dictates where their sales tax dollars get allocated.
Bobby, can I clarify, and I don't know if it's confidential, can we discuss and share with the committee whether or not the Amazon warehouses here are distribution centers or fulfillment center? Are we enjoying the blue box where it comes to us or not? And again, I qualify the question because I don't know if it's confidential.
Yeah, not, I think in that case, not entirely confidential, because we don't see the city receiving anything.
Okay.
It's a distribution center.
Yeah. And so that's really, you're not in the blue box. Everything that the city gets from Amazon, it comes by way of the countywide use tax pool.
Chair, I know that we had at least 2 committee members join, and then one of them did leave. So if we could note for the record, if Roseanne can just note that for the record.
Ashwini, if you want to check the chat box, there was a chat in there, and I don't think that person's no longer here.
Right. So I'm hoping Roseanne has the times when they joined, and I know one of them left, but we at least have one committee member on here that wasn't there when the roll call was called.
Yes, shortly after Mr. Young started his presentation, Joyita Ghosh joined. And Daniel Sullivan joined, and I think he left.
Yes, he's not here at this point. I don't know if we have the time for meeting minutes. We'll need to record that. We
yes.
can go back and look at it. Thank you, Roseanne.
Are there any members of the public with us?
There is one member, so.
Are there any questions related to the presentation from HDL?
I have another question. I'm just not clear in my head with regard to the last slide in the green box. So the Bradley Burns allocation of that 1% goes to the county, right, for the use tax.
It goes to, and I brought it back up on my screen, it goes into what is called the countywide use tax pool. And again, kind of sometimes the easier way to look at it or think about it is, it's kind of a bucket that use tax money goes into. And at the end of each quarter, when CDTFA is allocating out its final payments, it empties the bucket, if you will. Every city gets a piece of that bucket, the pool. And it depends on how much your local city or a local city generates of the entire county's local businesses. Okay, so it's a proportionate share each quarter that comes back to each city. So if let's just say, and I don't have it up, I don't recall off the top of my head, but just for numbers, if the city of Milpitas generated 20%, its local businesses generated 20% of the entire county, city of Milpitas would get 20% of the countywide use tax pool. Okay, and so every quarter, CDTFA will do the math to figure out how much goes to each agency from that pool or bucket, if you will. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Thoughts? Joita, it looks like you're talking, but I can't hear you. Don't know if your mic might not be on.
I was muted. Thank you for your presentation.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you guys so much for your time. Happy to present for you. I think either myself or some of our representatives will be available to you guys in the future as well to walk through. And in the meantime, if you have any additional questions, feel free to pass them on to Lauren. I'd be happy to get you additional information as needed.
Okay, moving on the agenda, item number 9. Staff has been informed that one of our members is resigning.
Correct, just to let everyone know, and then the mayor will go through the process of selecting another member to replace that opening.
Okay. Is one of our alternates under consideration for moving up and we get a new alternate, or are we looking for a straight replacement of a primary, for lack of a better word, member?
Chair, I think it'll be up to the mayor. Right now, what we've done is posted the unscheduled vacancy that went up yesterday. We're taking the resignation as required by the bylaws to council on Tuesday, the 21st. And after we receive applications, it'll be up to the mayor if he wanted to recommend moving one of the alternates to the regular position, the voting position, and then appoint another alternate. And that goes to council as well for approval. So it's a few weeks until we'll have somebody replaced, at least.
Thank you for the clarification.
Sure.
That's the end of the agenda. Is there anything else anybody wants to ask, state, or did we said there was a member of the public?
They left.
They left. Okay.
Yeah.
I guess we won't get anything from them. Anybody have anything else?
Mr. Young, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I had a quick question that if I were to buy a car in Chicago, at that point, will Measure F still be counted in the taxes that I pay?
It should, yes.
Okay.
The difficulty is the tax rates for local agencies and the tax law in Chicago and Illinois, which I'm less familiar with than California. But in theory and off the cuff, I would say yes, you should have to pay.
Okay, thank you.
I would caution you that purchasing an automobile out of state is extremely complicated, and you need to consult a tax professional because it depends on various reasons or various things like, is it used, new, why did you purchase it, how long before you bring it into California? It's as complicated as a bunch of legislators can make it.
Job's been done though, so too late.
There may be a lot of questions and answers to come.
Okay, I think that's it. Does anybody have anything? Going once, going twice? The meeting is adjourned. Thank you for your participation.
Good night.
Thank
Good
you.
night, everyone.
Thank you.